Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cynthia Knight, and I'm the director here at the Barron Art Center. And on behalf of myself and my great staff, Brandon Powell, our program coordinator, George Burchak, my admin, and I have a few docents here, Greta, and I have Courtney. They help keep the Barron Art Center going. Of course, we couldn't keep it going without the support of Mayor McCormick and the Town Council. They support all of our events and help us extensively along the way with all of our programs. I also have to thank the Cultural Arts Commission of Woodbridge. With us today, we have Father Smith, and we also have Connie Ellick and Dr. Jerry Fee just walked in, and they do a lot of fundraising to do extra projects or supplement my budget in many ways. So thank you for being with us. And the reason we're all here today, it's all about the Barrons. We have a barrel of Barrons in the front display case. And with me, I have Tom Barron and Chris Frey. And they were the people responsible for all of this collection of the wonderful artifacts and history of the Barron family, which is also a big history of Woodbridge Township and how it was formed. They were very integral for us becoming Woodbridge almost emancipated on our own. So at this time, I am going to give the microphone over to Tom.
Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. Welcome. When I first came to the Art Center, I made a phone call to Cynthia, and I said, "Hi, this is Thomas Barron." It was April Fool's Day, and she's like, right. You're really Thomas Barron. But I am actually really Thomas Barron. And the good news is that my great-grand-uncle, Thomas Barron, who is seen behind me here, had made a fortune in New Orleans and in banking, and he was also involved with commerce, but not slave trading, according to some careful research. But he came back to Woodbridge, and his favorite nephew, John Connor Barron, who is over on the wall to my left, and who is his favorite nephew, he entrusted a boon of $50,000 to commission this building as a library, public library, and it was designed in the style of what's called Richardson Romanesque, which was a very popular style around in the East Coast, and you'll recognize it. It's actually H.H. Richardson is the progenitor of that style. But at any rate, the idea that this building was funded and the property donated by the family to the township for the benefit of the township. And Barbara is going to read a little bit about the library concept in Art Center real quick. This is my wife, Barbara Wampole.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. And we've been working very hard for months, actually, on this. And every so often, I would sort of stop and think about what was it about. And there are lots of complicated things that anything that a family does over the centuries. But what came to me was what I'm going to read, because I'm better at doing that. The Barron Art Center was originally conceived and built as a public library in 1877. As the first public library in Middlesex County, it followed by only 5 years the first free public schools for children in New Jersey, established by law in 1872. The implications of a person of means funding a public library at that time, 142 years ago, seems worthy of reflection. Literacy, oral or written, is a transformative resource for an individual, a community, and a civilization's culture. It's a democratizing resource at the foundation of the ideals of humanity. The availability of literacy for all people implies a community's aspirations to fairness, to encourage and nourish wisdom. A library is a place to dream, as many of us have no doubt done. And this place is also devoted to the arts, which for me is a very special thing, and for my husband too, and many of the relatives that we are close to in the family. This exhibition at the Barron Art Center, Tom Barron's book, and Chris Frey's contributions of ancestral research reflect a continuation of the spirit of both Thomas Barron of Woodbridge and John C. Barron, my husband and in-law's great-grandfather. It's an honor to be able to pause with this community and my family to recognize with gratitude their family history, the gifts and the givers, in an effort to assure that both are remembered and emulated. Thank you.
I'd like to. I want to thank you, sir, for making your presence here at our event and
Certainly.
blessing us with the township's goodwill.
Thank you. Well, my name is John McCormick. I'm the mayor of Woodbridge, and I don't know if there was a mayor back in 1877. Probably not, so let me officially extend our thanks from the township to the Barron family for the donation of this facility and the land that it sits on. This is really cool. I tell you, I've been around reading some of these things. It's amazing what the Barron family has meant to Woodbridge for the past, how many years? 1877, 23 plus 100 plus 19, so 142, right? Something like that. But this is a treasure in Woodbridge Township. It's very much, to a large extent, unheralded, because every time we have an event like for the kids with the poetry readings or the creative writing or the art, I ask for a show of hands how many people are here for the first time. 3/4 of the parents raise their hand because unless their kid has ever gotten an award, a lot of people don't even know this exists and have never been here. But Cynthia Knight and the board does a tremendous job with this facility. You heard some of the members. I don't think she introduced Ryan Michelson, who's on the board. I don't know if anybody else. There's Geraldine. We also have Monsignor Charles Cicerao from the local St. James Church. Now, you did tell me what you did. You played John Connor Barron a couple of years ago, right? This, back 9 or 10 years ago? You got to let your beard grow a little longer for it next time. Yeah. We also have Father Bill Smith from St. Anthony's in Port Reading. Paul, I don't know if you mentioned Paul. Paul just came in maybe. But anyway, this is a terrific facility, and we really appreciate what it's meant. I just posted on Facebook a picture of every exhibit here, and this is an exhibit for the benefit of people watching home. This will be open until October 27th. I would say that the Barron family is the most noteworthy family in Woodbridge history. You have the Barron Arts Center, you have Barron Avenue. The Woodbridge High School team mascot, as you all probably know, is the Barons. So every Friday night in the stadium, people are yelling, "Go Barons." Yeah. And it's not always the football team they're rooting for. I think a lot of them are rooting for the family. But thank you for coming out. How many of the Barons have never been to the Barron Arts Center until today? Wow. Wow, that's pretty cool.
I've never been inside. Do you want to just register?
Inside, yeah. How many people are here today, Tom?
Well, there were 28 of the family.
28 of the family. How many?
The extended,
Out of how many family members do you think you have? Can't count?
No, more like 35 or 6.
All right.
It's a pretty good showing.
Pretty large show.
Yeah. It's a pretty
Great.
good
And
showing.
who came the furthest?
Yeah, they were.
California? You came from California for the show? For the exhibit? Wow. Wow, that's terrific. I hope you're all staying in Woodbridge.
Yeah.
All right. I heard you're not dining in Woodbridge, though. You're dining in Edison. That's a problem. That's a problem. Next time, you're going to have to let us know. But this is our 350th anniversary as a township. And it's June 1st this year. So from last June 1st, we opened up with a gala at our community center for about 650 people. And then the whole year we had events. And then June 1st of this year, we had a picnic, and I'd say 5,000 or 6,000 people came to Merrill Park in town. And all during that year, there have been exhibits. The Barron family has been exhibited and noted the whole 12 months, and it was terrific. And Sean Burns, who really looks like John Connor Barron, actually played him in some of the skits we did. We had some films. The kids did history projects all through the schools. It was wonderful. Everybody got involved, and believe me, for the last 12 months, everybody knew what Barron's meant. The Barron family has met in Woodbridge Township. So I want to thank you for coming out today. I want to thank you for having this event. I don't know if you want to do it every year, but certainly every 5 years. I think we got to commit to every 5 years coming back and having another Barron family reunion. Is that fair?
Sure.
Every 5 years, all right. And I'll still be here, by the way. Okay. I'll still be here. I hope you will too. Yeah. I learned Tom is pretty noteworthy himself. He's got an Emmy and an Oscar. He's an author. He doesn't talk about himself too much. He just talks about the family all the time. But he does. He
does talk a lot.
He does talk a lot. No, he talks a lot. He got me before I walked in. As I was walking up the stairs, he saw my shirt. He said, "Oh, Mayor, I was there for 20 minutes." But anyway, I'm proud to have met him, and I'm proud to be the mayor of a town that recognizes our history as much as we do. This building's a big part of it. It's because of your family. Cynthia, the board, thank you, everybody. And Tom, thank you for having your event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a proclamation, but it says everything I just said, so we'll send it to you.
Okay, good deal.
Thanks again.
All right, let me bring Chris up.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Okay, so Chris, so this is the other half. So it turns out that the Barrons, there were two children that are involved here.
Yes.
There's John Connor Barron, who is the son. Okay, well, we're just quickly to sketch in the family. That's Grandma, old Mama.
What's her name?
Fanny Brown Barron.
Fanny Brown Barron,
Her son, Thomas Barron.
Thomas Barron on my line, and then John. Well, actually, this is the uncle, and then this is John Barron, the father of Maria Louisa, and John Connor Barron, who's pictured as an old man. Maria Louisa married this guy here, Fredericks, and Chris Barron Frey, relative of the Fredericks, is going to fill us in on how the Barrons got from the bogs of Ireland to Woodbridge.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, everybody. I am the family genealogist and have been at it for many years now. And yes, this was my great-great-grandmother, Maria Louisa, and her brother was John Connor Barron. But it started certainly before then. And it started, as you can see on one of the poster boards here in Ireland for the Fitzgerald and the Barron family castle. And I have to acknowledge my husband, Chip, because he has indulged me as a genealogist, an amateur genealogist, going with me to Ireland, filming the castle, of course, learning the history. And then when we came back, we roped my poor mother, Claire Frey, into it, and she enjoyed it, but we dragged her all around to where the first couple generations were. They came in 1640. The first Baron, Ellis Barron, came to Massachusetts. And my mother and my husband had to get used to me going to all of these cemeteries all over New England. And as soon as I found an ancestor, getting down on my back and having them photograph me, they indulged me, and thank you for that. By the time it came to the next generations, first and second, Moses and Ellis, we came down to the third, fourth, and fifth. And now we're in Woodbridge, New Jersey. Ellis, his son Samuel Barron, and his son Deacon Joseph Barron. And those three, we started slowly. We went to the cemetery across the way, Presbyterian Cemetery, looked at the graves. There were far too many Barrons to film me lying down. So we just got our foot wet. But it brought us really inside and to get to know a wonderful woman, Cynthia Knight, sorry. Might as well be Barron, who has really been a wonderful, wonderful contact and helped us greatly. Now, as far as it's really great to see you, sir, because in 2010 you played Dr. John Connor Barron, and I just want to tie in a little briefly how that all came about. After we had visited, got our foot wet in the cemetery, we came in, we met Cynthia. I found out there were Barrons in California, there were Barrons in New Jersey, Rhode Island, and I found the script, the diary, Dr. John Connor Barron's Battle of Manassas, and I was contacted not long afterwards by a wonderful woman named Vern Neisel, who wrote the treatment of the play, and we, in this very room, you played Dr. John Connor Barron right over here. We had my family was there, my mother, my husband, my father, my brother, etc. And we all sat down, and it was a wonderful afternoon. And Vern, when she was introducing us, said, "And I'd like to introduce the magnificent Barrons." And if you think my husband has ever let my mother forget that, when she walks into a room, it's a magnificent Barron. So it continued on from there. The Barrons went... From that time, another great thing that came on was that I was introduced to Thomas Barron. And for the last 9 years, Tom and I have had a great working relationship, mostly by email, but we've met with him and his wife, Barbara, a couple of times. And we were posed a question by Cynthia Knight here at the Barron Arts Center. She said, "Do you think there could one day be an exhibit about the Barron family?" So over the years, we kicked this around. 9 years it's been going on. And over the course of that time, many of my living relatives had passed on, and I started to inherit many more of the memorabilia that you see here. A lot of the photographs that you see here of my great-great-grandfather, Charles Forrest Fredericks, which includes certainly Barron's, came into my possession. Tom and I would talk about it. We'd send things back and forth. And it came to a point where it seemed like we did have enough and we could do this. So pulling all together has been certainly a lot of work. But I think the most precious thing for me is that in accruing all this information, I'd say, Tom, who are the Hufties? He'd say, those are who are the Calagians? And then he'd ask me, who is so-and-so? We went back and forth. And I think for me, the most important thing, yes, the dead relatives, they are very important, of course. But what's really important as well is the live Barrons that are here today. And to have all of you here together is a dream, to have you all a part of it. And I want to acknowledge and thank you all for being here. And pass it on to Tom.
Introduce your side of the clan here.
Oh, yes, I would like to introduce, absolutely. My mother is Claire Fredericks Frey, right here. This is my brother, Jonathan Scott Frey. And this is his partner, Dawn Whitmore. My husband, Chip Reed, I had mentioned before as well. My first cousin, my mother's sister's son, is Michael Santos, and he's right here. He came all the way from Charleston. Not as far as California, but he came far. And am I missing anybody? I got it all.
Chief?
Hmm?
Chief? Dolores Joffrey, who
Yes.
is the chair of the Cultural Arts Commission. She'd like to say a few words.
Thank you.
Dolores, come on in.
Yes, Dolores, thank you. And Dolores was here 9 years ago, and we appreciate your support as well as the mayor's. Thank you so much.
There you go.
We are just so thrilled and so very, very happy to have the Barron family here. Thank you so much for taking your time, all the energy you put into this beautiful exhibit, the historic significance of it. We cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much. I know, Chip and Tom, you have been instrumental in this. I was at the Barron Art Center many afternoons when Cindy was on the phone and on the phone and on the phone, and I was saying to myself, but I've got to talk to her before I leave. So we really do appreciate everything you've done, and for all of you who came today, I hope you take the time to look carefully at this exhibit because it tells the history so well. We of the Barron Art Center staff, I'm not a staff member, but I'm speaking for them, and the Woodbridge Township Cultural Arts Commission would like to present you with this small token of our appreciation for all of the work you've done, and hope that you can enjoy a little bit of dinner on us tonight.
Oh, wow. Thank you. So I'm going to pick up the family on the other half of the family, which is the John Connor Barron heirs. Again, that's the father, John Connor Barron, and he had 5 children.
That's John.
John Connor Barron there. And this is John also. So this is the Father John.
Do you have a middle name?
Say again?
Do you have a middle name for this guy?
He does not have a middle name.
We don't know. Just John Barron Sr.
Just John Barron Sr. Old John. He's just old John. That's he looks older, but he's actually younger because he's a son. But his family is where I am the youngest son's grandson. Okay, so that makes me a great grandson. But fortunately, Pops, we call him Pops, Albert Ellis Barron, was born long enough into the family line that John Connor Barron's experiences of the Civil War were still fresh, and only one generation past the grandfather. So at any rate, we'll get to that. But in terms of my family, we've got most of all of us are still Californians. So we have my eldest sister Lynn, younger sister Katie, my middle sister Marguerite and her family, which is Robert Newland and Glenn Lego in the back. And then, so that's our little club. And then the sister, May Barron, who, the elder sister who is also figures into the history, her clan is here. Mary, or you want to introduce your gang?
I'll try. Well,
Okay.
I had one maybe out of script thing to say, is that I wanted to thank your father.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm thinking that he was the one who brought me into this, as well as your mother. And he also was the one who did the little manuscript, right? unless I'm wrong.
There's a story.
Okay, there's a story there. But
the answer is
anyway,
yes.
I just thought he was the outreaching Barron, and he also was a doctor, so he follows in the line of doctors. And
As you are a doctor.
As I am a doctor, yes. And amazingly enough, when he went to his 50th reunion from Stanford, he came to my house. He found me through your mother, I think, and presented me with a cherry pie and told me the whole history of the family. And I went,
wow.
"Oh, well, that's great." So anyway, thank you to your father for reaching out and for holding the family together and bringing you guys here. And this is my sister, my older sister, Archie Leidy, Frances Archibald Hufty Leidy. You want to? There.
We're pointing it out. We got more. I see.
And then Lauren. Here's Lauren Alegria. He is a great.
Bishop, your husband.
Do you think I'll get to that? Don't worry. He's a great grandson of John Connor. And there's my husband, Daniel Alegria, and Christina Howe beside him. And there's Paige Leidy and Courtney Leidy, which are Archie's children, and great grandson of John Connor Barron. So for us, it's all been a big eye opener. This was not the genealogy we followed most closely, but for me, it's been the most exciting. They're talented, wonderful, generous people, and it's been a pleasure.
Oh, we're good. Great. And then, I know. It's Emma, you're up. Okay, with a whole nother crowd. This is the Kalajian family, which is my father's younger sister's crew.
Right, and my mom was a twin. Her brother's name was Ellis, but they called him Bob, and I think it was because they were the Bobbsey twins, Bob and Betsy. And so my mom and my dad had three of us. My middle brother, Walter's not here today, but he's represented by his youngest son, Ted, and wife, Heather. And then my youngest brother is here, Robert Kalajian, and he has John hanging right in the B&B.
Yes,
in
Newport.
Yeah, in Newport.
Then Fanny.
Oh, and Fanny too. Okay.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, Walter wasn't able to. Yes, and my my husband Gary Rhodes. Thank you.
I made the mistake. I received a technical Oscar, not a gold statuette, but I was the first up and forgot to thank my wife. And hers, so she says, "Well, you have another chance to earn another Oscar." So, at any rate, there is a creative streak that runs through the whole family, and they're watercolorists and graphic artists and writers and poets and a whole crowd of creative people. So the idea that the library building should turn into this art center is actually cool. Now, the building itself has its own, whatever you want to call it, architectural integrity and vibe. But the fact that there's this community that comes and goes and brings their art and brings their creativity in here, I think is something that we're all sort of relating to. And along that line, my family had put together this little booklet, which is part of the Chris alluded to initially, which was my mother and father were down in the South sniffing around for relatives and whatnot, and they found a relative that had a memoir written by John Connor Barron about his experiences at the Battle of Bull Run. Unable to pry it out of the hands of the relative, they took the copy to the supermarket and made a really bad copy and brought it back, and my sister Lynn and my father meticulously, page by page, deciphered the doctor's script into a text document on the Macintosh back in the days of the floppy disks and the rattly printer and whatnot. And they had taken a really bad photograph of this the painting behind there, And I put the whammy on it and made the cover, and we sent this off as a gimme to the museum, which then ended up in Chris's hands and then ended up with the Monsignor performing as John C. So as the years rolled by, I thought, well, okay, John C's an interesting guy. He was staked by his rich uncle, Thomas, and became a Wall Street, I'll call him a capitalist, but he was basically a guy who was doing investments, and he was head of various, there's a whole long family history, but the gist of it is that he was a man about town, did all sorts of things, but his credentials as a Civil War veteran and being a medical doctor got him into a lot of clubs and a lot of forward. And then in the meantime, he was a very competitive character who got wrapped up in sailboat racing and hunting and all sorts of that activity, which has been documented and is part of the display over there as entertainment. But the memoir is a historical document because he was an eyewitness to the first battle of the Civil War. It's called Bull Run by the Yankees, and it's called the Battle of Manassas by the Southerners, and it's either the Civil War, the War of Rebellion, or the War of Northern Aggression, depending on which end of the family you're in. But the thrust of it is that as his personal account, he had a very interesting experience. And along the way, we've had a number of coincidences, which some of the family can relate. But one of them was I had started on this. Lynn had already been working on it. She goes off to India on a tour. Now, you want to tell the story, or should I tell it? Do you want to tell it?
Yeah.
Okay, so Lynn's this is partway through this whole drama.
You know how we all say that there's 6 degrees of separation from everybody else in the world? Well, that came to me point blank when I went on a trip with a motley crew of women from Oakland in 2007 to India. We went on a tour through the Mughal forts, through Jodhpur and Jaipur, Udaipur. We were having tea one early morning in Jodhpur, overlooking the town, the beautiful blue stucco, and hearing the call to prayer, Muslim prayer. And one of the people on the tour, whom I didn't know very well, a doctor,
Of course.
said to me, just very casually, Barron, would you happen to have any relatives in New Jersey? Well, yes, I do. And my great-grandfather, John C. Barron, had property in New Jersey. John C. Barron? She had been researching John C. Barron. She was a Civil War buff, and she was particularly interested in the medical doctor angle of the Civil War. And she had all this memorabilia, as it turns out, personal letters between the rich uncle and his favorite nephew. And it was just mind-blowing that here we were sitting over Jodhpur, having tea, talking about my great-grandfather with this stranger. So from that point, we were able to get together because she's fortunately in San Francisco. She came over and we started trading stories, and she showed us all of her goodies. And that was part of the genesis for this exhibit. Thank you.
Wow, great. So the twist was, besides the fact that these letters were amazing, and Lynn had forgotten her email address, and it took about a year or so before I got copies of them. When Dr. Melanie Martin gave us the letters, she gave us really nice scans, which you'll see on the wall. She not only transcribed them, but she annotated them. And unfortunately, even though I was working on the memoir, I was really not very conversant about the Civil War at the time, especially the run-up in the Battle of Bull Run. And it turns out that John C. Was a name dropper, and he kept sort of salting his memoir Well, initially we thought it was a diary, but subsequently I determined that it was a memoir. And in fact, there's an expression in Civil War lore called waving the bloody shirt, which is basically the veterans writing about their experiences as part of their credential. And given the fact that he became a member of the Union League Club, which was a big supporter of Lincoln and abolition and the rest, and he was dealing with Frederick Law Olmsted and Tiffany and all these other characters who were part of the Manhattan Civil War veteran group. I didn't know what he was talking about. So at that point, I got a couple of my friends who were real scholars to get me into the Huntington Library in Pasadena, which is this wonderful facility, and they have a huge collection of Civil War stuff. And I thus began this odyssey of learning about the Civil War, learning about contextualizing what John Connor did, picking up a few little facts that changed Civil War history, perhaps, and discovered also that there are more books written about the Civil War than the Bible, sadly, Monsignor. But on the other hand, the idea that this little gem became a jewel of scholarship. So at that point, I decided to make it into an art project and design and build a book. And we have the book on display, and you're welcome to thumb through it. And I'm donating a number of copies to the museum to sell to you guys for their benefit. Remember that. But in general, the concept of the book was to illuminate this experience and not make it a dry bit of history. And if you're a real Civil War buff, you can dig into the footnotes, of which there are 50 pages, that tell you all about, like, for example, he says, I was having a nice conversation with Raymond from the Times. Well, it's not just Raymond from the Times, it's Henry Raymond, who founded the New York Times. So he this is the sort of, how should we say it, his joie de vivre of how to deal with the Civil War. And incidentally, he was preoccupied with horses, which is a family affair, and he wrote extensively about his horse Ned. So, it's not completely dry. But that was the beginning. So he comes out of the Civil War. He marries well. He has a big family. He makes a whole long business career, joins the Union League Club, but then he also becomes wrapped up in high-stakes sailboat racing and ice boat racing and hunting, and in the end, he gets wrapped up with a company in New Mexico that had 60,000 head of cattle and a whole army of cowboys and Wild West stuff with outlaws, including Butch Cassidy. I mean, it's a whole Shaggy Dog story, but at the end, that had an unfortunate, sad Wild West ending. And at that point, my grandfather and his eldest brother went to New Mexico to try to untangle all of this business, and he retreated to California. So that's how we ended up in California. So this is the Barron side here, the history, and the Frederick side here. And at this point, I think we're ready to ask Cynthia. Where's Cynthia? Cynthia, come back. We have to thank you. So Cynthia, she has been, she and her, and Brandon, where's Brandon? He's hiding someplace. Come on, Brandon.
Come out of hiding.
Okay, so
And George out too.
and George.
And George?
Okay, so Chris and I have just been, it's like a mosh pit. We just sort of like took a lot of stuff and threw it at them, and they have just done a fantastic job of making this beautiful space work. So I want to thank you.
Of your hard work and efforts. You stealing away into the Huntington Library, you going through all of this paper and bringing the family memoirs together. It's a lot of work. This is truly a labor of love. And I'm so glad that your whole family is here and you're sharing this with us here in the Barron Art Center, that really Thomas Barron set forward to bring the first library to Middlesex County, and it might even be the state of New Jersey. I don't know for sure. but this is wonderful, and having you here is terrific.
Okay,
Thank
well, thank
you.
you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.